which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet on this very lovely and beautiful Friday. It's been a busy week and we're not done yet. We still have some serious business to attend to, but we can't jump into it until the internet works. And sometimes that can be a little bit squirrely over here, as you know, but it looks like it is working, which is tremendous news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, and we're located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about the word provoke, which it certainly seems like is what is happening with the Chinese right now. Provocation, provoking the United States. Something very interesting is going on. There's a balloon flying all over the place. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today in our first segment. In fact, we've got two segments today about spies. We're going to go with the Russian spies first before we turn our attention over. We're going to go to the Chinese spies first before we go back over to the Russian spies and get an update on the McGonagall case. But first, this is the big story of the day, obviously. We've got a lot of news that there's this weird balloon thing floating around. It's a balloon, but it's like a blimp kind of a thing. It's like multiple buses long. It's big. It's massive. It's so big they don't want to just knock it out of the sky. And so we're going to ask ourselves some questions to get our bearing straight, to get oriented as we go through the stories and ask ourselves, what is really going on here? Is it an accident? Is it a threat? Is it a test? Is it a shiny object? Is it a distraction? Don't know. But we'll talk about it. We've got details coming in from Reuters. They're going to walk us through sort of the timeline, the chronology of what went down. Blinken, our Secretary of State, canceled his meeting with the Chinese, and so we're going to talk through that story. And there was a pretty big update from Brigadier General Patrick Ryder today. We look at all these clips. We've just got a ton of them because he is giving us a lot of new information, and it's a weird story. The media had all sorts of questions about this. First of all, can this thing be controlled? Can this thing maneuver? Can it go up and down? Has it changed course? Is it a threat? He talks about the word payload, and he freaks out the whole media. Says, have you talked to China about this? You know, what are they saying this is? Can you confirm that the photos that we're seeing are accurate, or are those real, or are those fake? And why not just shoot it down? All these types of questions came, and so we'll go through each one of those. We also are going to hear from the CIA director. Now, you may not be too familiar with him because I wasn't. William J. Burns is our CIA director, and he was giving a speech out at the Georgetown School of Foreign Service just yesterday. And he talked about China. It's basically simultaneously to this story breaking, so we'll look at that. And we have some reaction from our current president, Joe Biden. While we have this foreign adversary thing floating around literally overhead, we ask ourselves what the president has to say, and as usual, not too much. So that's the Chinese spy segment in the first one. Then we're going to go and do a quick update on this Charles McGonigal case. And we've talked about this one before, but this was the ex-FBI agent, special agent in charge of a field office, and he was very involved in a lot of the initial Trump inquiry into Russiagate. Remember that whole stinking hoax that they concocted after 2016? He was involved in it, and he got charged with a whole slew of crimes in two different district courts, one out of D.C. and one out of the Southern District of New York. So we're going to go through this story because there's more. There was a little bit of an update on the court docket out of the District of Columbia. We'll take a quick look at that just so we can see what is going on. And then Jordan and Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, Matt Gaetz, over from the Judiciary Committee, sent a letter to Christopher Wray from the FBI, and they are demanding answers on this thing. Now, we've seen a lot of letters from Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz, and of course, James Comer and many others here. But that, and of course, you might say, well, those are just Republicans and they're just going after the Democrats, right? Maybe it's only just them and who cares? Well, it's a little bit bigger than that because we also have Senator Dick Durbin, who's a Democrat. He's in the Senate side. He's also on the Judiciary Committee over there. They still control the Senate. But he also sent a letter. This one is going over to Merrick Garland. Okay, so even the Democrats are like, yo, this is bad. Not good. So we'll talk about that. We also have a new weaponization of the government committee hearing coming up in February. And so we'll give you that date. And as you can see, there is just a ton to get to. And if you want to be a part of the show, my friends, the best place to do that is by heading on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we have an amazing community chatting away, including anti-fragiles over there. Facts Matter, John McGarvey, Paul Mino, We're getting ready for we have a meme after party after today. It's Meme Friday over there on our channel, on our community. And so we'll be back over there after the program to dig into that. So come check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Of course, also want to thank our sponsors of the program. We've got Brick House Nutrition, which is where you can get your superfoods called Field of Greens. Get your servings of vegetables and fruits every day in this delicious powder. You just drink it down. They've also got a ton of other great stuff there on their website. So check it out. Go to fieldofgreens.com. Save 15% using code Robert and get yourself feeling nice and vibrant and just bursting with green everywhere you look. Also, of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group, which is where we help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that, in their lives. We offer free case evaluations online at rrlawaz.com. All right, and so let's get right into it, my friends. Dive into the meat and potatoes on the day. The Chinese balloon continues to float overhead, and now we're learning it might be there for quite some time. Today, we're going to take a look at Brigadier General Patrick Ryder. He gave us a bunch of information about what they are willing to share, including some details about this balloon, whatever this big object is floating overhead. And we're going to see what this thing looks like. We're going to go through the details. We're going to see what the CIA director has to say about China. But first, let's take a look at the background on what is exactly happening here. From Reuters, they have an article that tells us a Chinese spy balloon flies over the United States. Okay, if you haven't seen this all over the place, of course, there's some good details here. Posted on February 3rd, summarizing all of the latest activities. Chinese spy balloon been flying over the United States for a couple of days. And a big part of the question that I have is sort of who first identified it? How long was this thing floating around? Did this get reported because of civilians, or did this get reported because of the military? Right? Did the civilians report this and the military had to come out and corroborate it? Let's see. They said in what could be a brazen act, just days before Antony Blinken was sent to go over to China. Fighter jets were mobilized. Military leaders advised Joe Biden that shooting the balloon would cause safety. United States, quote, took custody. We're going to hear from Brigadier General Patrick Ryder about that. What does that mean? Can this craft move around? Can it go up and down? Does it carry a payload? Is it just recording instruments? What's going on? There's a lot to get to. Separately, Canada said there might be another one of these floating around, a high-altitude surveillance balloon there as well. We see that the news initially broke as CIA Director William Burns, who we're going to hear from later, was speaking at an event at Georgetown. Right, I have that clip. I went and clipped it out for us to listen to, where he called China the biggest geopolitical challenge facing the United States. Very convenient timing. The United States government has detected and is tracking a high-altitude surveillance balloon, which is what Patrick Ryder said. We'll listen to more from him. But China responded, and the foreign ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said that Beijing was, quote, verifying the situation. He said, I would like to emphasize that until the facts are clarified, speculation and hype will not be helpful to the proper resolution of the issue, she told a regular daily briefing on Friday, saying that China abides by international law, says China has no intention of violating the land, territory, and airspace of any sovereign country. So we'll ask ourselves if we believe that or not. U.S. officials said that they did raise it with their Chinese counterparts, so we have communicated with them the seriousness with which we take this issue. And again, this is not a balloon you find at a birthday party. This is not a National Geographic weather balloon. This is something that is so big, they're saying it could be the size of like 3 bus loads, right? 3 different buses kind of back to back in terms of solar paneling and different sensors that are a part of this payload that we're going to learn more about. It's so big that they don't want to just shoot it down for fear that this thing might come crashing down on somebody's house. One official from the U.S. said the balloon was assessed to have limited additive value from an intelligence collection perspective, right? In other words, what they are getting from their satellites and probably from their congressmen like Bang Bang Swalwell, they just say, no, I mean, we don't really need balloons. We've got Swalwell's just emailing us whatever we ask him for. So Blinken is expected to travel to China. Marco Rubio said this was alarming and not surprising. Tom Cotton called for Blinken to cancel his trip, and of course he did. This is an image of the object that is flying around, and as we're going to learn, this is right overhead, so hello to our Chinese friends out there. Hope you're enjoying the show. Happy Friday to you guys, too. Don't forget to like this video wherever you are. And there's just moseying on across the whole country as we sit here today. Since then, Washington have been communicating. They talk about it as a potential safety risk. They say that assets like F-22 fighter jets were mobilized. We wanted to make sure that the area was being emptied out. Civilian airspace was grounded in certain locations. One of the officials said the flight path would carry the balloon over a number of sensitive sites. Oh, that's a problem, isn't it? But would not give any more details. Malmstrom Air Force Bases in Montana has 150 intercontinental ballistic missile silos. Also said they began tracking this over the Aleutian Islands and in Canada before entering the United States. So it just kind of came over. Such balloons, they typically operate at 80,000 to 120,000 feet. Aircraft, right, which is very, very high. So, anybody who's saying they're going to shoot it down or something like that, it's higher than commercial airliners. Craig Singleton, China expert, said that the balloons had been widely used previously and said that surveillance goes both ways. So interesting little details there. Now we're going to dive into this a whole lot more when we hear from Patrick Ryder coming up very, very shortly. But here is a video of what it looked like. So somebody recorded this, the balloon. They show us an image of the moon, and then they pan over to the balloon. So this is the moon. They're going to take us over to the balloon.
Here's the moon.
There it is.
There's that.
Very high up there, right? Even higher than commercial airliners. Right? Higher than commercial airliners. So that's a very high up there. So you think about when you see a plane up there, right? It's very, very small. It's big. And you can see that. Now, the balloon is going to be a lot bigger than the payload. And the balloon is going to be reflecting all sorts of light off of it. So it's going to stand out, maybe more than an airplane would. But it's a big object. And if you can sort of juxtapose the two things, right, we know what it stands like to sit on the ground and look at an airplane. And that's big. Yeah. So pretty amazing. So that's what it looks like. Now, of course, many people are asking, what the heck is going on here? Nobody trusts the government at all. Nobody trusts our DOJ or our military or anybody to tell us the truth about anything anymore. And so let's just go through some possibilities that this could be, maybe or maybe not, and ask ourselves some questions about this. China said it was just an accident, right? Which, of course, is a big LOL. Like, no, we were seriously studying the migration patterns of the birds due to global warming or something. Okay, China. Nobody believes that for a minute, but all right, it's an accident. Maybe we shouldn't go to World War IV over this since we're already in World War III. But everybody's kind of just throwing that right in the garbage. Doesn't even look like a weather balloon. It's not anything that, it has a justifiable basis for being in middle America. Ridiculous. Is it an actual threat, right? Is this something that the military is maybe covering up? Maybe this does have a payload. They don't want to shoot it down because it's got something problematic in it. Right? It's carrying something. It's a bigger threat. And they're just like, let's let it float over us. Right? One of these situations, like in the movies, like just keep everybody calm. Don't tell them there's a nuclear bomb strapped there to the bottom of the payload. Right? It's all good. Everybody's fine. It's just going to float right over us. Something like that. Could it? I don't know. Probably not. That would be nuts. Similarly, but we ask questions, right? It is a threat in the form of the fact that this has physical debris that if they pop this thing, it's going to crash on somebody's house. Or it's going to cause damage, so they say, right? This is several busloads long. It's a big chunk of trash that the Chinese have sent over there. We get enough of it from Amazon. So it's all just floating around up there in the sky. But it's also an intelligence threat, right? I mean, they're gathering something. Well, they say, obviously, it's not that big of a deal. Whatever they're gathering from this, all of those instruments, all of this payload, it's just not enough on there to even worry about. So they don't even consider it an actual threat. They're okay with a foreign nation flying a surveillance balloon over the middle of their country. Now, I don't know about you, or any of my fellow Command and Conquer friends out there, any real-time strategy gamers out there, I know from firsthand experience, when you hear in red alert, Kirov reporting, you start to sort of quiver in your boots a little bit there because that the Russians are sending over a big balloon that's going to nuke your base any minute, and it's going to be a big problem. And so it just gives me bad vibes. I'm hearkening back to those moments. You got to be very careful. So, similar thing happening here, regardless of what it is. Isn't this one of those situations where you kind of shoot first and ask questions later? Thanks for acknowledging you made this catastrophic mistake. But we don't play those games. You don't get to just float across the top of our country like there's a super highway there for China. There's also the possibility that it could just be a non-threatening test. They want to, right? There maybe it is just a big hunk of trash up there. It's completely meaningless. They're not capturing anything. There is no surveillance, right? It doesn't have a problematic payload. But it is a problem because they're saying they want to know our response time, our reaction time. How open is America to accepting airspace incursions? Though maybe the next one does have whatever they have at Wuhan Lab 2. Who knows? Coordination between the U.S. and Canada, right? Watching. Okay, we're going to float one over Canada. We're going to float one over the United States. Or this all could just be a big, giant, shiny object distraction. Chinese CCP surveillance, whatever it is, really kind of irrelevant. They say they're not getting anything more. It could be a domestic distraction. It could be a Chinese distraction. It could be just something to get us all talking about this because Blinken was supposed to be meeting with the Chinese and they wanted to goof on him, just like they did the last time he was down there when he got backhanded when he was meeting with them wherever that was, I think in Hawaii. So who knows? All sorts of different reasons as to why this could be what it is. We don't know the details of it, but let's listen to what the Defense Department says. This is over from the DOD speaking on behalf of the Pentagon. Brigadier General Patrick Ryder, the press secretary for the Pentagon, speaking on C-SPAN, giving an opening statement about the balloon situation. Let's listen.
In regards to our announcement last night regarding the high-altitude surveillance balloon, I'm not going to have much new information to provide other than to say that the North American Aerospace Defense Command continues to monitor it closely. While we won't get into specifics in regards to the exact location, I can tell you that the balloon continues to move eastward and is currently over the center of the continental United States.
Great. Just floating around over Kansas.
Again, we currently assess that the balloon does not present a military or physical threat to people on the ground at this time, and we'll continue to monitor and review options.
That's it. That's all. That was in his opening statement, right? Then he talked about Ukraine. He talked about missile deals and, endless money for them. And so the list goes on and on. But the media had a bunch of questions, and you can see we've got them all chronicled out here. We're going to go through this press conference in some detail. But one of the first questions was, all right, look, this is kind of weird. We've seen those National Geographic Discovery Channel weather balloons. It's like 3 people in a safari hat out there who just sort of launched the thing from Antarctica or whatever. That doesn't appear to be what this is. Mr. Brigadier General, or can you please explain to us what this is? Is this a weather balloon or something else?
And move to your questions. We'll start with AP Tarka.
Hi, Pat. Thank you for doing this. China has said this is just a weather balloon that has veered off course. Why is the Pentagon convinced that this is a surveillance balloon? And then can you give us a little bit more on the status of the balloon? You said it's in the central U.S. What state? Do you have any guidance for people as they see this balloon or they're trying to photograph it or maybe try and interfere with it?
Sure. Thanks, Tara. So first of all, we are aware of the PRC's statement. However, the fact is we know that it's a surveillance balloon, and I'm not going to be able to be more specific than that. We do know that the balloon has violated U.S. airspace and international law, which is unacceptable. And so we've conveyed this directly to the PRC at multiple levels. And in terms of specific locations, I'm not going to be able to.
Well, what was their response when you conveyed it that they were in violation of international and U.S. law? What did they say?
Go into specific locations again, other than to say it's moving eastward at this time. Yeah, you had a follow-up.
Well, just a quick follow-up on as people start to see the balloon, do you have any guidance for should they try not to interfere, not photograph?
So the balloon is currently assessed to be at about 60,000 feet. So again, well above the range of civilian air traffic or where civilian air traffic would normally fly.
And so I think she's asking a question about should people shoot at it? And that would be very high for a land-based projectile to reach. So he is sort of, I think, skipping over that question, kind of not addressing it. But I think that's kind of what she was asking without asking about it. And he is not answering that without answering it.
Certainly aware that there are cameras, civilian-owned commercial cameras that could spot this balloon. In terms of guidance to folks, again, this is something that NORAD is closely monitoring. We do assess at this time that it does not pose a physical threat, as I mentioned, to people on the ground. So we'll just leave it at that.
All right.
Jennifer.
So he moves around. They talk about a bunch of other things. A great question was about the control of this, right? Who is flying this thing? Is anybody flying it? Is it just a balloon that's just kind of on its own? Does it have maneuverability like an RC controller? Here's the general.
General Ryder, who is controlling this balloon right now?
Again, we know that this is a Chinese balloon, but beyond that, I'm not going to have specifics.
But is it, you say that it's moving eastward and it's over the continental U.S., it's not over Montana anymore. Is the Chinese government controlling the movement of the balloon, or is it just floating with airstreams?
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm not going to go into any specific intelligence that we may have. Again, we know this is a Chinese balloon and that it has the ability to maneuver. But I'll just leave it at that.
And once it's over a body of water, will you shoot it down?
Again, right now we're monitoring the situation closely, reviewing options, but beyond that, I'm not going to have any additional information.
Yeah, so the issue, a big issue in my mind, is the maneuverability. Are they flying this over certain locations? Like what about the trajectory of this balloon, of this surveillance spy device? Was it going one place and then it got caught and then it moved around and went to a different location? Because they got caught? Uh-oh, the Pentagon's got wind of this. We better go stop looking at this nuclear silo and go check out this one before they catch on, right? And are they going to just allow this thing to leave? Are they just going to allow it to just fly out of the country? Back over to China? What? All right. So a big question is about maneuverability. And so we'll play this one because this is a great question, right? Where is it going and what are they doing with this if they can move it around?
Go to Phil and then I'll come over to Qasim.
Is the position of the balloon classified?
Phil, right now, what we're not going to do is get into a hour by hour location of the balloon. Again, we're monitoring it closely. As I mentioned, right now, it's over the center of the continental United States. That's about as specific as I'm going to get.
But I understand it might be inconvenient, but does the public not have a right to know if
The
balloon
public
is over their
certainly
state?
has the ability to look up in the sky and
that's
see where
nice.
the balloon is.
Can we rely on our government to give us any information about that? Or is that like way too much to ask? Yeah, it is too much to ask. Okay. If you want to know where this Chinese spy satellite is flying over your head, why don't you go out and buy a stinking telescope? Okay.
Thank you. Qasim?
General, you said the balloon is maneuverable. So does that mean that it's not drifting?
So the balloon is maneuverable. Clearly, it's violated U.S. airspace. And again, we've communicated that fact to the PRC.
If possible, can you tell us if the balloon, when it entered the U.S. airspace, has it changed its course in any way?
The balloon has changed its course.
He did not want to answer that one.
Which is, again, why we're monitoring it. But that's about as specific as I can get.
Oof.
Thank you.
The balloon has changed its course. Listen.
It is maneuverable. Clearly, it's
So when it landed, when it came in and they got wind of it, the balloon, it was going one place and it made a change, a course correction. Where'd it go?
it's violated U.S. airspace. And again, we've communicated that fact to the PRC.
If possible, can you tell us if the balloon, when it entered the U.S. airspace, has it changed its course in any way?
Yep.
The balloon has changed its course,
Yep.
which is, again, why we're monitoring it. But that's about as specific as I can get. Thank you.
All right. So I guess they can just rummage around wherever they want to go. I mean, maybe they're going to go visit, I don't know, where are they going down to visit? Texas, maybe they're going to come check out the Grand Canyon, great views up there. Come over to Arizona, come check out the Grand Canyon. They can go check out some of the sights and sounds, maybe go over to Yellowstone, fart around over there for a little bit before they go check out Florida. It's beautiful over there. And they're definitely also going to want to make sure they check out all the nuclear silos in addition to, maybe the Pentagon, the White House. They can go look at all of the other major national security infrastructure while they're just, moving around over there. So it's going to be very interesting to have to live under the new Chinese control. And if you're not interested in doing that, if you want to, really sort of get beefed up so we're all strong and vibrant to protect against the Chinese invasion? Well, the thing that might help with that is Field of Greens, fruits and vegetables and healthy nutrition. Because as you know, the pandemic's over. Some of us are a little bit soft, myself included on this. We all want to drop some of those leftover pandemic pounds. And how sick are you of all these ads for weight loss pills and fad diets and all that stuff? I mean, you've been there, you've done that, you know what works. Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every single day. You do that, and I bet the weight just falls right off. But, vegetables, not a fan. And fruit, how much time do you have to prepare all of that every day? Solution. Let's talk Field of Greens. Field of Greens is a science-backed formula of specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories faster and lose weight the healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. You're going to look healthier, feel healthier, and you're going to be able to fight back invaders. But the greater proof is going to come at the next checkup when your doctor says, man, you look great. You've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. So let's get you started. 15% off your first order. Go visit fieldofgreens.com. And don't forget to use code Robert to save that 15% off and get your real organic superfood from our friends at Brickhouse Nutrition, fieldofgreens.com. Feel vibrant, burst with green energy, and be healthy, my friends. All right. And so now, a great question from the media. Mr. Brigadier General, there's some interesting things that this craft is doing. Can you tell us, sir, certainly, is this a threat or not?
Go to Matt.
So you said at this point, the balloon doesn't pose any risks to citizens. How is it that the U.S. can assess that, given that the balloon is at such an altitude, without actually getting eyes on it up close and assessing the equipment that's on board? And secondly, are there any alternatives being considered to shooting it down? Is there any option to take this balloon out of the sky intact to maybe get a better look at that equipment?
Yeah, like nets or like a hook. Or can you do like that scene from that movie where the dudes fly out of the one plane and land into the other plane? Where's Tom Cruise? Somebody call him up.
So again, this is a surveillance balloon, operating at about 60,000 feet. Clearly, we did a very close assessment in terms of what it's doing. And as I mentioned, military commanders have assessed that there is no physical or military threat to people on the ground. And so in that regard, we'll continue to monitor. In terms of way ahead, we will continue to review options, but I'm not going to have anything further to provide on that. So thank you.
Yeah, there's all sorts of other solutions to this. Tom Cruise, Harrison Ford could solve this thing. Even Balloon Boy. Whatever happened to that kid? Remember they lost him up there in the sky or attic or something like that? Somebody can fix this thing. I don't know what's so complicated about it. I mean, Tom Cruise could, I think, probably solve this thing in like 90 minutes at least. So what we have more coming out next is more clips from Brigadier General Patrick Ryder. And this was the one that really kind of stood out to me, that this is going to be over the United States for days, all right? For days. They're just going to let this thing float around out there. 4 days doing whatever it is it's doing. I don't care what it's doing. Do you?
I was wondering, is there any way that the Pentagon is able to gauge how long it could potentially loiter, comparing to balloons that have been in the past? And how long do you anticipate that it could loiter?
Sure.
It kind of depends what they're looking for. We don't really know how long they're going to stay, or they, what their schedule looks like, how much sightseeing is going to happen.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we'll continue to monitor it. Right now, we assess that it'll probably be over the United States for a few days, but we'll continue to monitor, review our options, and keep you updated as we can.
It sounds to me like they're going to let this thing go. It's just going to float out of here. They're just going to let it float over, I guess, into the Atlantic or into the Gulf of Mexico or somewhere. What? It's just up there. Well, I don't know. It depends on them. He should act like Karine Jean-Pierre and just say, I don't know. Why don't you talk to the Chinese council? I got to refer you to Chinese council on that one. All right. Just Hunter Biden has their number. Call him.
Thank you. Okay. Let me go to Nancy here.
Hi, General. I want to go back to a couple of things you said. You said several times that the U.S. is reviewing its options. I'd like some clarity. Is the option of shooting down the balloon, particularly as it's going over more populated areas, off the table? Is that still amongst the options that the U.S. military is considering? And if so, under what conditions would it do so?
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. So at this stage, what I can tell you is, again, we're reviewing options. I'm not going to go into more specifics than that. And when and if there's any updates to provide, we'll let you know.
It's been ruled out, shooting.
Again, we're monitoring it and we're reviewing options. I'll just leave it there.
And then a senior defense official yesterday said that similar incidents had happened under the previous administration, and yet some of those administration officials have come forward and said they're not familiar with it. Is there any way you could give us more details on when it's happened, over whether it was over the continental U.S. or over U.S. territories? Is that something you could potentially take to provide the public more details about the extent
Yes.
of these things?
Great question. Great question. Has this happened before? Trump people said that this has not happened before. So if you say that it did happen before, and Trump people says that it did not happen before, which one is it? Right? And now we have to ask ourselves about what's the definition of happened, right? In Trump's case, did the balloons sort of come along the coast and come close to the border? Did they cross over the corner of the border, fly over, let's say, Washington State or over the panhandle of Florida or something like that? Little incidental incursions. And this is like the first big incursion? Or did the military know about these potential incursions and not tell the Trump people, knowing that the Trump people would do something, weird about it? Or are the Trump people lying? Or is the military lying?
Things happen.
So what I would tell you right now is that information is classified. I'm not able to provide it other than I can confirm that there have been.
Okay, if it's classified, then they should probably just go check Joe Biden's house. They're probably in a drawer somewhere or underneath the couch cushion.
Other incidents where balloons did come close to or cross over U.S. territory.
And then I just want to reiterate something that Phil said earlier, that given that it's not classified and the public can see it, I just ask that you take the question that we have more specifics on where it is, given that there's no clear security reason by your own estimation in terms of keeping that information from the public.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And again, we're just not going to get into an hour by hour where the balloon is. So we will do our best to keep you and the public informed in general terms on where the balloon is, and try to be helpful in that regard.
I respect that, but I think we're in a if you're not confirming photos, that we're in a guessing game where people think it's flying over. I just think some fidelity would be in everybody's.
Understood. And again, I think a key point here to make, and to purposefully belabor the point, which is that, again, as this balloon traverses the continental United States, we assess that it currently does not pose a physical or military risk to people on the ground. So we will continue to monitor, we'll continue to review our options, and provide information and updates as we're able to. So
Weird that they don't even want to tell you exactly where it is. What if it's maneuvering around? Little Chinese spy balloons over our heads right now, man. It's weird. Floating all over the place. But he says, we don't want to play that game with you guys, right? They're not going to do like a Santa tracker. They'd rather track Santa than a Chinese spy balloon. And if they play this game where it's here, they know it's probably just going to, rile a bunch of people up. And so they don't want to do that. But the media is saying, well, people are going to do that anyways. They're going to be out there with telescopes and binoculars trying to figure out where this thing is. So maybe you should be a little bit more transparent with this one too.
Jennifer.
If it approaches Washington, D.C., will you shoot it down?
Again, Jennifer, we're reviewing options, but I'm not going to get into hypotheticals or speculate on potential future actions. So let me go to the back of the room here, and then I'll come up to Joe.
Thank you, General. Thinking about the route of the balloon, was it impossible for the DoD to deal with the balloon before it reached to the airspace of the United States?
Yeah, great question there. You guys are very competent in the DoD and the Pentagon. You've got all of these infrastructure, radar, and squadrons that you just boom, they're flying all over the place, and you're protecting the homeland. I mean, we spend what like $1 trillion every year for it, or whatever it is, for the whole military apparatus, right? It's a big, big bill. Why didn't you guys stop this weird balloon from flying across our airspace?
Yeah, so we've been monitoring the balloon.
And we let it float in.
We are aware. Again, as I mentioned, it is a maneuverable craft, and we continue to assess and make appropriate decisions based on on how we're going to address, what we perceive as a potential threat or not.
So it kind of sounds like they saw it coming in and they let it come in too, right? We've been monitoring it. We saw it. We read the article that apparently it was coming through the Aleutian Islands up there near Alaska. So they just let it waltz on in here?
The safety and security of the American people is paramount. And so, again, at this time, we assess that it does not pose a physical threat to people on the ground. We'll continue to monitor it, and we'll continue to review options. Thank you. Let me go ahead and go to Joe here, and then we'll come back to this side of the room.
So you said that this is...
She doesn't. So what you're saying is...
We'll continue to monitor it, and we'll continue to review options. Thank you. Let me go ahead and go to Joe here, and then we'll come back to this side of the room.
So you said that this is the first time this isn't the first time we've seen a balloon fly over the continental U.S. In the past, has it flown over other sensitive areas, such as military bases? You haven't been very specific. It's just the continental U.S.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I haven't been very specific because that information is classified, and I'm just not going to be able to talk about it. So thank you. Idris.
Thank you. The Canadian Defense Ministry yesterday said they were tracking a second potential spy balloon. Are you tracking a second potential incident? And when the balloon was coming, I guess what I'm confused about is, when were there discussions to shoot down the balloon? Were there any discussions about shooting down the balloon when it was not over the United States, when it was potentially over international waters? Or were the discussions only when it entered U.S. airspace?
Yeah, thanks, Idris. So on your first question, we are tracking one balloon. So in regards to statements by Canada, I'd refer you back to them on that. In terms of the discussions about whether or not to shoot down this balloon, that was an option, right? And so that was something that was taken into consideration. Again, because we assess that currently it does not pose a physical or military risk to people on the ground, for now, we're continuing to monitor and review options.
I don't really know what that means exactly. It doesn't pose a military or civilian threat to people on the ground. I understand the physicality of that, but he's not saying over and over that this is not a threat, right? It's like he's not coming out and openly saying this is something to not worry about, right? This is meaningless. This is not anything of concern. He's just saying it's not a threat. That's why we decided not to shoot it down. So there's something wrong, right, with this. We don't know exactly what it is. Are they going to let it just float on through here? Something is very strange.
Thank you. We'll go back to Ellie, and then we'll come up here.
Thank you. How big is the balloon that you're tracking? And have you guys picked up, is it leaving anything in its wake, like sensors?
Yeah, so on your latter question, I'm not going to get into intelligence. We do continue to monitor the balloon. We do know that it is a surveillance balloon. In terms of the size, I'm not able to get into the specifics other than to say that it is big enough that, again, in reviewing our approach, we do recognize that any potential debris field would be significant.
Wow.
And potentially cause civilian injuries or deaths.
Isn't that a threat right there? Like, China's flying, whatever you think it is, whether you think it's a threat or not, it's a big chunk of trash metal heap, regardless, right? Even reduce it down to the most benign thing. It's a big ball of helium with a bunch of metal. So big that it has the threat of killing American citizens in the homeland, in domestic America, according to our own military. And they're just going to let this thing float on out of there?
Or significant property damage. So again, this is part of the calculus in terms of our overall assessment. But again, we'll continue to monitor it. We'll continue to review our options and keep you updated as able. Let me go here and then over here.
Thank you. Following up on the balloon question, during your conversation with the Chinese, have they indicated to you what is inside the balloon to prove the point that it's a civilian balloon or weather monitoring thing? And does that assessment differs from your assessment of what is inside the balloon, what it's trying to do? And secondly, on an India question, this
great first question. The Chinese said this was just a weather balloon. Like, do they have thermometers on there? Did they point you to the big fat thermometer on there? Or is there a manual on there that talks about cumulonimbus clouds or something? No. So did they give you anything to verify their claims?
This week, India and US launched a initiative on critical and emerging technologies. This has quite a bit of defense component in it. Can you give us some more details about it and how is it going to strengthen, build up your relationship with India?
Sure.
Okay, so also talks about India, but there's another point to this that I thought is also very interesting. You know, we don't actually know, and I would honestly say that the military, who knows whether they know about what other technologies are on that thing. I mean, because if you remember, and you know, again, it's always hard to trust anything the military tells us or what the news tells us if you presume that most of them are all compromised by the same operators. But there was a story about the Chinese releasing the hypersonic missile or satellite or something like that, and it caught the U.S. military off by surprise. It just captured their attention. They thought there was no way they were this close to developing that type of technology. They thought they were 10 years down the road, right? And you're seeing a lot of other really rapid advances in China, and they're regularly challenging and threatening, you know, sort of computer supremacy for computing power. And so who knows what's on this thing? They're presuming that it's not a threat, but they don't really know. And as it's moseying around doing a little, you know, vacation sightseeing tour of military bases, maybe that's not a risk they should take.
On your second question, I'll have to take that because I just don't have that information in front of me. On the first question, I appreciate it. As I mentioned, we have contacted the PRC. I'm not going to get into their reaction. I'd refer you to them for that. But we have clearly communicated that this balloon is violating U.S. airspace and international law, and that this is unacceptable.
And what did they say? Are they going to fly it out of here?
And then go over here.
And you're going to let them?
Thank you, sir. Is the Pentagon looking at any possibility of maybe altering the course of the balloon to take it to a location where they can shoot it down in a rural area?
Again, monitoring, we're reviewing options, but I'm not going to go into any further specifics. Thank you. Sir?
Thank you, General. Considering that this is a surveillance balloon, as you said, does it have ability to collect very sensitive data, given that it flies over nuclear sites in the state of Montana?
Yeah, so again, I'm not going to get into intelligence. You know, as we mentioned in our statement last night, once the balloon was detected, we acted immediately to protect against the collection of sensitive information, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. Phil?
Is there any possibility that there's any nuclear or radioactive material aboard the balloon, or is there anything that's aboard the balloon that makes you believe that it could pose a risk if it were shot down?
Short answer is no. But again, right now we do not assess that the balloon in its current configuration at approximately 60,000 feet poses a physical or military threat to people on the ground.
Yeah, it's interesting because you could even also think that it could be powered, right? It may not contain like a nuclear weapon, but it could contain like a nuclear powered device, right? Basically something they would put on a satellite that they send out into space, that, you know, a small electrical generating nuclear generator thing that even if you drop, they might turn into a dirty bomb or something like that. So he said no. Doesn't sound like there's any other, you know, bioweapons or anything like that on there, which is all, of course, very good news. But then, of course, the question is, well, why are they just allowing it to fly all over the place? Why don't they just shoot it down? Or like the reporter asked, why don't they just sort of corral this thing and drag it out into an open field and then shoot it down, or drag it out over, the Great Lakes and then shoot it down over there, or capture it, right? So that they could see what it's doing. Or maybe that's what they are trying to do, is wait to see where the Chinese fly it to next. Or maybe they want to go check out this silo, and we'll go, oh, that's what they're looking for. Great. And they're choreographing what they're searching for. Or maybe they can intercept the signals that this thing is sending back to China, and they're trying to gather more intelligence about who's communicating with it so that they can go backtrace it to President Xi sitting around with Kim Jong-un somewhere. You know, who knows? But it is interesting they're allowing it to just continue to fly all over the place. We've got more questions that came in from the media. They're asking about the photographs. We've seen a lot of the photographs and the videos. People are recording these on their cell phones and other things. And so the media asks, well, what about the photos? I mean, can you confirm at least that what we're seeing is real?
On the balloon, can you confirm the photos that are out there, that this is not the man on the moon and that is the actual balloon?
Thanks, Tony. So certainly aware of photos being posted online. I'm not going to get into the business of confirming whether or not those are, where those photos come from. Again, I can tell you that the U.S. government, NORAD, is monitoring this closely, and we will continue to review options.
How close was the U.S. to was the president to ordering a shoot down of the balloon?
Yeah, so again, I'm not going to get into internal discussions within the White House. Again, right now, we assess that there is no threat, a physical threat or military threat to people on the ground. So,
Okay, but what about like military intelligence? Is there a threat to that? Because that might justify the removal, unless there's some reason we can't remove it.
we're continuing to monitor. Then we'll just leave it at that.
All right, so that's that one. Here is another direct question. All right, look, can we just ask you this, Mr. Brigadier General? Very, very simple, very direct question. Why not just shoot this thing down?
Thank you. Ma'am.
Thank you, Pat. You said that this is violating our airspace, so why not take it down?
Great question.
Yeah, so, clearly as we assess options and considering the size of the payload on this, looking at...
Did you hear that word? Payload? The size of the payload? That's going to come back to bite him. The media does not like that word. They're going to ask him a bunch of follow-ups. Let's listen to it one more time.
Clearly, as we assess options and considering the size of the payload on this, looking at the potential for debris and the impact on civilians on the ground or property damage, again, running through the various factors and looking at in terms of does it pose a potential risk to people while in the air. And right now, as I mentioned, we assess that it does not pose a risk to people on the ground as it currently is traversing the continental United States. And so out of an abundance of caution, cognizant of the potential impact to civilians on the ground from a debris field, right now we're going to continue to monitor and review options.
And if I may, you mentioned that we've seen this kind of activity before, so why are we sharing this one and why last night if you were following it for a few days? Is this some sort of sign that we should take from China ahead of Blinken's visit or from the activity that we had in the Philippines?
So she's asking him a question that makes it sound like they knew about this for a few days ago, but the military just came out and decided to let us know about this. Maybe because it was interfering with actual airspace and they couldn't hide it anymore. Maybe because it was on the heels of this trip from Blinken over to China. Could be a whole slew of other reasons. We don't know.
Yeah, so in terms of any, hypotheticals about messaging from PRC, I'd refer you to them on that front.
To the PRC Council?
Again, I think what makes this different is the duration and the length of which it has been over U.S. territory. But beyond that, I'm not going to be able to go into any more specifics.
Couple questions there about why not just shoot it down. We have a few more, and they're very unhappy about that payload word. So we're going to come back and talk about that. But of course, we did have that trip from Blinken over to China. And NBC News told us this earlier. They say that Blinken, on the heels of this, postpones the high-stakes Beijing trip after the spy balloon is spotted over the United States. Secretary of State on Friday postponed a trip to Beijing after a suspected Chinese spy balloon was spotted over the United States. A senior State Department official said, we have concluded that the conditions are not right at the moment for Blinken to travel to China. They said the U.S. is committed to maintaining open lines at all times, including during this incident, the official said that he is still planning to make a trip at the earliest convenience. Major issues already beset the upcoming trip before they try to spy on us with this balloon. Chinese Foreign Ministry said the airship is from China, but it's a civilian airship used for research, mainly meteorological purposes, they said on their website. They said that the Chinese side, according to NBC, the Chinese side regrets the unintended entry of the airship into the U.S. airspace due to force majeure, right? Circumstances outside of our control. It added that China would keep communicating with the U.S. to, quote, properly handle this unexpected situation, right? The ministry said the balloon, quote, deviated far from its planned course because of strong winds and lack of a steering ability. They say it's been spotted in Billings, Montana, 6,000 miles away from China. Later on Friday, the Pentagon spokesman, Pat Ryder, who we're going to listen to again, came out. On Thursday, the Canadian Department of National Defense said that they were also actively tracking their own balloon, but didn't provide any more details other than saying that they were safe as well. So there's questions about this, of course, about the discussions with China and the difference between the Chinese satellites and the difference between the Chinese balloons. So let's start with that one. Question from the media to the general. Sir, the Chinese have pretty sophisticated technology. They've got satellites up there. I mean, why do they need weather balloons? Why don't they just get what they need from Eric Swalwell or the satellites?
Mike.
Thanks, Pat. Yesterday, a senior defense official said that the intelligence gathering capability of this balloon would be no better than any Chinese satellite in low Earth orbit. If that's the case, why would Beijing go through the trouble and expense to send this balloon on such a journey?
Yeah, I'd have to refer you back to
their counsel.
PRC on
Any
that.
opinion why?
PRC
Again, look,
counsel.
we're monitoring this. As I mentioned, it's violated U.S. airspace. It's violated international law. We've communicated that back to the government of China. But again, I'd refer you back to China in terms of.
But I assume that that the Pentagon is trying to figure this out itself. Why they're bothering to do this if they can already, if it's offering no better intelligence gathering than from a satellite, right?
Yeah. Again, I mean that's a statement, not a question. So.
Yep. A question mark at the end of it then.
Yeah. Again, I'm
Put a question mark at the end of it, he said.
not going to have anything other to provide.
Okay, well, if I do that, I'm not going to have anything else to provide to you about this. It's a very interesting question. So if that is true, like something can't be true. Like all of these things are not true. It's not just a weather satellite. It's not just an accident 6,000 miles away. You know, it doesn't have steering ability, but China said it doesn't, right? None of it makes sense. Another question goes over to Ryder. Sir, how is this impacting your discussions with China? We know that Blinken was just about to go over there, and they're asking him about the diplomacy now.
Go to Rio, and then I'll come back over here.
Okay, thank you very much. Two questions on the Chinese balloon. So there is a speculation that Chinese balloon flew over Japanese airspace before reaching the U.S. continental U.S.
Wow. So it flew over Japan before getting to the United States. So now the Japanese are going to be unhappy too.
Can you confirm that?
I've seen those press reports. Again, as we acknowledged in our statement that we posted last night, we have seen this type of balloon activity elsewhere before. But again, I'm not going to get into intelligence and I'm not going to have any further information to provide.
Secondly, how will this incident affect the Secretary's future engagement with Chinese counterparts to maintain the open lines of the communication?
I think we've been very clear that we're always open to maintaining an open line of communication with the PRC, and in that regard, nothing has changed. Thank you. Let me go.
Very little new information there other than it looks like, you know, we're trying to sort of now gauge where this thing came from. Was it constructed in China and then float its way over to the United States, or was this thing transported and built in the United States and then erected from within the United States, right? Which might even be scarier, who knows? But it obviously is going to cause some diplomatic tension, and we'll see what Blinken does. Now, as I mentioned, we put a pin in that word earlier about payload. He said, well, you know, this balloon has a payload that's not that big of a deal. And so you're sitting there, right? Anybody who is sort of like, you know, connected with the military, they probably are, oh, well, payload is anything that it's carrying. And so maybe he's using sort of a military phrase for, you know, like cargo. Maybe he's saying maybe the cargo, although even cargo is like, well, what kind of cargo is in there? So here's what he said the word payload, and the media didn't like that at all. And so they were asking him multiple questions on his way out about payload. Sir, you said the balloon has a payload? Can you please tell us what that means exactly?
Time for just a couple more, Oren.
Two questions on the balloon. First, on maneuverability. Can it maneuver up and down as well as laterally? In other words, turn as well as change altitude? And in terms of tracking, how are you tracking this? Is it radar? Is it aircraft? And is it continuous tracking, or is it more intermittent than that?
Yeah, thanks, Oren. So beyond saying that we are continuously tracking the balloon. I'm not going to go into the specifics in terms of how we track, other than to say that we have multiple means at our disposal to do that. In terms of more specifics on the balloon, again, I'm not going to get into intelligence again, other than it is maneuverable, and I'll just leave it at that. All right, two more questions, Phil, and then Qasim.
The Chinese, you said it changed course. Did it change course following your disclosure of its presence over the United States? And secondly, is to the point about its capabilities, how is it powered? How is it moving? How is it maneuverable?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So again, on your latter question, I'm not going to get into intelligence. Clearly, it's a balloon that has a payload underneath it.
What does that mean?
They'll just leave it at that. What's that?
What do you mean by payload?
Question was, what do you mean by payload?
It's got a large payload underneath the surveillance component, underneath the actual balloon piece of it. So just leave it at that. And then in terms of the maneuverability, again, all I can say right now is at this point, again, it's moving eastward across the United States, currently over about the central United States.
Did it change course after your disclosure, or did it change those?
I don't have that information. Yep.
Clarify payload, that sounds like munitions or something that would pose a threat to
No,
US
again,
citizens.
it is a surveillance balloon, right? So there is a
She said her question was, it sounds like payload means like munitions. Like, is that what you're talking about?
I don't have that information. Yep.
Clarify payload, that sounds like munitions or something that would pose a threat to
No,
US
again,
citizens.
it is a surveillance balloon, right? So there is a
Video. There it goes.
look at a blimp. A blimp has a basket, right? So there's a basket underneath it, in layman's terms.
With what?
So again, large enough
What's it
to
carrying?
be concerning if there were a debris field. So, all right, Qasim, last question.
Has there been any mill-to-mill communication with China with respect to the balloon?
Again, we've communicated at multiple levels, and I'll just leave it at that. Okay. Yep.
But is it arm? Is it munitions?
It is a surveillance balloon. Again,
So they do not like that payload word. So one more time, Pat, I just got to be clear. Is it arms? Is it, what is it?
Yep.
But is it arm? Is it munitions?
It is a surveillance balloon. Again, does not pose, we currently assess it does not pose a physical or military risk to people on the ground.
Okay, what could payload that? Is it an engine? I'm
Again,
trying
I
to.
can't go into more details. So, okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right. So there's a payload on the balloon. It's a surveillance payload, whatever the heck that means. He doesn't want to tell us too much about it. But we turn our attention now over to the CIA director. His name is William J. Burns. And very interestingly, he was also giving a speech at Georgetown yesterday. And he's kind of a dry fella to listen to. But the question was about China and the idea of what is China doing? And you may have heard of things like the Belt and Road Initiative, where China is trying to sort of expand its industry and buy mines and provide technology and infrastructure to different parts around the world. Like one example would be Huawei, which, was trying to install 5G in various different countries around the world until they realized, oh, you're just a bunch of Chinese hackers and we don't want that. And so this is theoretically one facet of a multi-pronged effort by the Chinese to probe various parts of the world. This is the CIA director explaining.
I think, it's fashionable sometimes to think about, we all need an American national security policy to pivot to major power competition, China and Russia. And the truth is that a lot of the global competition with China is going to take place in parts of the world like Africa, the Middle East, or South Asia. Our ability, both as an intelligence agency, but also the wider US government, to navigate those parts of the world better than our Chinese counterparts is absolutely critical. So we want to build on the habits of cooperation we've built up at CIA over the last 2 decades on counterterrorism issues to try to compete more effectively as well, but also to highlight for policymakers the underlying challenges, which are going to have an enormous impact on the rest of the world. Because anybody who thinks that, the challenges that we were just talking about are going to stay contained in Africa. Wasn't paying attention when, watched the migration challenge that Europeans faced a few years ago as well. So it's a really important part of our job to stay focused, even as we shift resources and attention to China and Russia, to stay focused on that set of issues as well. Terrorist threats have not gone away.
All right, so a little bit there on how he's thinking about China, and he's sort of thinking about it as something that is trying to extend into other theaters around the world, and the United States also has to play in those theaters in order to counterbalance China. So that's the CIA director. Not a whole lot new out of there. We also ask ourselves about the president. The president, who is the commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief, the person who's supposed to stand up strong against America's adversaries and say, these are the boundaries that we have, and you're not supposed to cross these boundaries or else. That guy? Well, he didn't want to talk about it today. Joe Biden was out giving a speech. Somebody asked him about the Chinese balloon that is surveilling America, going to be loitering up there for several days. But Joe Biden didn't want to talk about that one and exited the door as usual.
And so this is what it's all about. So I'm heading off to Philadelphia. And if you want to ask me a question about the economy, but I'm not going to answer any question about anything else because you never will cover this.
Mr. President, why did you decide to postpone Secretary Blinken's trip? Take any blame for inflation, Mr. President?
Am I taking blame for inflation? No.
Why not?
Because it was already there when I got here, man. Remember what the economy was like when I got here? Jobs were hemorrhaging. Inflation was rising. We weren't manufacturing a damn thing here. We were in real economic difficulty. That's why I don't. Thank you.
Mr. President, when and how will you remove the balloon? When and how will you remove the balloon, Mr. President?
Nothing there. So come on, man. He's not responsible for inflation. Everybody else is. It's not his trillions of dollars that he signs into law. Not at all. And if he was expected to take any questions, well, he would only take one that he wanted on the economy. No questions about the balloon or the Chinese incursion into the United States, because apparently our commander-in-chief is not well suited for commentary on that either. Of course, we'll continue to cover. We'll see how long this Chinese balloon is floating around up there. Hopefully, you follow us as we continue to do. Thank you for liking this video wherever it is you're watching it. Thank you for subscribing, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends, and let's change gears a little bit. So we just talked about China, but now let's talk about Russia, because we've also got Russian spies. They're not floating over our heads as far as we know, but they are or were in the FBI. Russian spies, in particular this fellow right here, Charles McGonigal, are now going to be the subject of a congressional investigation, in addition to a DOJ investigation, criminal prosecutions out of 2 different courts. We're going to go through this because we have a very unique situation. We have consensus and unity in America. It's a beautiful thing. Look at this. 2 letters from opposing sides. Wow, it's a miracle. Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz, they sent one from the Judiciary Committee over to Christopher Wray demanding answers about McGonagall, and Senator Durbin, a Democrat who's in the Senate Judiciary Committee, sent a letter too. But that one went over to the DOJ. They both want to know why this guy, who was an ex-special agent, FBI agent, the man responsible for a lot of the initial stages of the Trump-Russia hoax collusion, fake investigation, why he was allowed to be so infested within the FBI for so long. Let's take a quick look at one of his cases out of the District Court for Washington. You see this one is called United States versus McGonagall out of the District of Columbia, last updated today, February 3rd. And this document wasn't even there when I checked this site earlier. And let's see what this one is. Here it is. The Honorable Judge. Okay, so this is just a waiver of speedy trial. So we'll come back to that. So this is what the docket looks like, and we'll go back to that one. Over the past few days since we covered this, remember, we rewind the clock and we saw the original charges were filed back some time ago. We read through all of the indictments previously here on this channel. But as we go up to the current filings, you'll see that there was a minute order where the judge asked the defense to waive your right to a speedy trial, right? This is going to take a long time. And so you know that you have a right to a speedy trial. The government can't just charge you and just throw you in prison for 35 years like Dantes. It is something where they've got to move quickly unless the defense waives it. So the defense counsel was instructed to file a speedy trial waiver. That's exactly what we just saw was filed today. So they are following orders. They say to the honorable judge, we are waiving our right to a speedy trial. Our client's been advised of his rights. We know this is going to take a long time and we're okay with that. So that's what's going on there. Not too much new. But there were several letters that also went out. Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz from the Judiciary Committee in the new House of Representatives sent a letter over to the FBI. On February 2nd, coming from the Judiciary Committee out of the new House of Representatives, submitted by Jim Jordan, chairman out of Ohio, sends a letter to Dear Christopher Wray, director of the FBI. And he says the following. All right, Chris. Our committee on the judiciary is continuing to investigate allegations of politicization and bias at the FBI. Just last week, with the indictment of former senior official Charles McGonigal, the American people were reminded yet again about the seemingly pervasive problems within the FBI. We write to request material about McGonigal's conduct. They say on January 23rd, the DOJ unsealed an indictment charging McGonigal, which we covered here previously on this channel, who is a former special agent in charge out of FBI New York counterintelligence. Why did he get indicted? For taking money from a Russian oligarch called Oleg. That guy had ties to Vladimir Putin. McGonigal allegedly violated sanctions imposed by the United States and the international powers and concealed the payment and laundered the money for the Russians. Okay? So this is an FBI agent, special agent in charge, by the way, who was colluding literally with the Russians. And this guy was in charge of investigating Trump for colluding with the Russians. McGonigal allegedly took these actions after previously supervising investigations into Deripaska and Russian rivals. According to the indictment, they say that his role as the special agent in charge, that he supervised and participated in investigations of Russian oligarchs, okay? His job was to investigate these people. Instead, he was conspiring with them. And he worked for the FBI during the time he was doing that. McGonigal also received and reviewed a then classified list of Russian oligarchs who the Kremlin was worried would get sanctioned as a result of the battle with Ukraine in 2014, not the current one. This misconduct erodes the public's confidence in the FBI. So they're asking for some information. They say this indictment of one of yours raises new questions about the FBI's counterintelligence efforts. According to reports, McGonigal previously played an instrumental role in the decision to launch the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, which was the investigation against Trump. In fact, the same Russian oligarch who paid McGonigal was working with Christopher Steele, the guy who wrote the PP tape dossier, whose widely discredited information played an essential role in the FBI's efforts to obtain wiretaps against Trump's Carter Page. Right? That's this guy. Soon after the FBI launched Crossfire Hurricane, which was launched by McGonigal, James Comey then promoted McGonigal to be the special agent in charge in New York so that he could stay engaged with his team, which included questioning Carter Page. During Crossfire Hurricane, the FBI then abused its authority and altered evidence. So Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz, they say, here's what we need from you, FBI. 1, all the personnel records from McGonigal. We want all of the communications related to the investigation of McGonigal. Plans to assess and address any national security risks posed by his indictment. In other words, what is the FBI doing now that you know that one of your agents is literally a mole? Like, pick any one of the TV shows. That FBI agent who's selling out the bureau for the Russians is literally this dude. And he was working at the FBI. So is the FBI doing a damage assessment? Are they going to fix this thing? What's going on here? Please provide this information no later than February 16th. In addition, we ask that you arrange a member-level briefing to discuss the FBI's investigation of Charles. And we want to review your procedures. What is the process to review the decisions that McGonigal made? Basically, this should open up the entire Trump investigation again. What review, if any, is the FBI undertaking to ascertain how the Russian Federation how they turn senior officials. Are you learning how your agent got turned? What's the process that you're learning using to know if he had improper influence over other agents? Did you close any matters that may have been improperly influenced? You need to reopen those investigations? Do you screen and monitor your agents? Do you even care? Do you even care about this, Chris? Please call us if you have any questions. Sincerely, your friends, Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz. Copying Jerry Nadler, the Waddler. So that's the letter. Now, this is from 2 Republicans from the Committee on the Judiciary out of the House of Representatives. And so you're saying, all right, it's just an aberration. Who cares that, whatever, the Democrats don't care at all. Wrong. The Democrats do care. This one comes out from Rick Durbin, Illinois, a Democrat from the United States Senate, the Committee on the Judiciary. And look what he says. The letter goes out to 2 people as well. Merrick Garland, U.S. Department of Justice, as well as the Honorable Christopher Wray from the FBI. Says, I write to express our concerns with the unsealed indictment. This is a Democrat speaking. Against Charles McGonigal on January 23rd, you charged him. Apparently, he's an agent of yours. He was special agent in charge out of New York. Even Dick Durbin says, yeah, these allegations are extremely disturbing and they raise concerns about the impact on the FBI. Mr. McGonigal oversaw many sensitive counterintelligence investigations, including Paul Manafort. And he was just put in charge of the FBI in October 2016. The committee remains in the dark on the true extent to which Mr. McGonigal's alleged conduct may have impacted these highly sensitive matters. Whether his alleged misconduct materially impacted the outcome of the investigations remains unknown. It's important to ensure the American people they have confidence in the FBI. Good luck. You guys have a lot of work to do to repair that. How many counterintelligence investigations did McGonigal oversee as the special agent in charge? Durbin wants to know. Of all of those, how many were related to individuals he's now accused of working with? What role did McGonigal play in the Crossfire Hurricane investigation into Donald Trump? Wow. What role did McGonigal play in the Mueller investigation? Has the FBI identified any other compromised evidence? What policies or procedures does the DOJ and the FBI have in place to make sure this doesn't happen again? And what policies and procedures, why did they fail to alert them that he had been compromised? Sincerely, your friend, Chair of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Richard Durbin. Copying Lindsey Graham. Oh, gosh. What's he going to do about any of this? All right, so that is Dick Durbin's letter. And so that's 2 letters, Republicans and Democrats sending this material over to the FBI and the DOJ demanding answers. And we'll see if they respond or what they have to say. But we do know that the new Weaponization of Government Committee is also going to be in session coming up very soon. They tell us next week, Thursday, February 9th, 2023 at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, the hearing on the weaponization of the federal government will be taking place. And they posted on Twitter, they are ready. And of course, we will continue to cover it when that comes up next week. I hope you join us. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on that next one. All right, my friends. Well, that is it for us on the show for the day. And we covered a lot of ground on this beautiful Friday. Russian spies and Chinese spies. Apparently, they're just going to be floating out there. So, it might be a good weekend for you if you're in a lawn chair. Grab a lawn chair, go outside and take a look at the stars, identify the Big Dipper, identify the Little Dipper. You can look at Orion's Belt and all of the beautiful astronomy. And then maybe you'll see our Chinese friends, overlords, just floating over your head. What a beautiful, beautiful weekend it's going to be. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this and more. I saw some very generous, very appreciated super chats. Come on in. And so we're going to do a refresh and say thank you to our YouTube friends. We're going to jump over to Rumble. We're going to jump over to Twitter and say hello to everybody over there before we go over to our Meme Friday after party, which is going to be a lot of fun. But before we do that, let's say hello to our YouTube friends. Johnny Tambourine is in the house. He says, I'd like to point out that the balloon is set to arrive over D.C. on Hunter Biden's 54th birthday tomorrow on February 4th. Happy birthday from China. Well, isn't that just the sweetest thing in the world? They're so nice. And, you know, I saw another one from Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think I forgot to clip this one today. It was my intention to do so. Let's see if we can grab this one. Because, yeah, there's another theory about what this balloon might entail, what it might be for. And, yeah, here it is. Yeah, so it's either a message for Hunter, or it could potentially be a message for Swalwell. This is what Marjorie Taylor Greene posted, who's a representative. She posted this. She says here, this is what it could potentially be. Eric, happy Valentine's Day. Love, Fang Fang. Your friend in China. Fang Fang. That could be what it is. You know, she is a congresswoman, so she presumably has access to some ultra high telephoto lens. Maybe that's what it is. It's a happy birthday to Hunter, or it's a happy Valentine's Day for Fang Fang, from Fang Fang for Eric. I don't know. It's pretty good. It's a good question, Johnny. Or happy birthday, Hunter. Maybe they're delivering him payment for some of his artwork. Thanks for the dono, Johnny. Devin is here. Says, I would also like to know how they got it here. And we also can't be distracted from the Biden docs. That's true, Devin. Devin Knox says, don't be distracted from the Biden docs. Yeah. You're right about that. I sort of am kind of like laughing at this whole story. It's like, why don't they just shoot it down? What a bunch of idiots. What are we wasting time for? Just shoot it down. What are we doing here? You know, but yeah, it's very convenient if they can just let it float around up there for a few days while we all just wonder what it's doing. Fred Pedamonte is here. His puppy's in the house. He says, Rob, you're not going to believe this. I came home from shopping. My dog was on his cell phone. I hid. Good call. At one point, he yelled, Director Ray, I don't care what you think. I don't pay you to think. You do what I tell you to do. Holy crap, you're kidding me. That's out of control. So Fred's puppy was hanging out with the Russians, was hanging out with Epstein, had Bill Gates over. Out of control. And now he's in charge of Director Ray. Well, Director Ray is a real good boy. I mean, your dog's a real good boy, but Director Ray's also a real good boy. He does do what he's told, apparently, and he just goes after white supremacists and all sorts of stuff. So, all right, well, what a smart, good boy. And he also says, Rob, my dog said I am spending too much on super chats. That's probably a good point. Yeah, and so, yeah, you know, your dog is very in control of a lot of different situations, so you better obey, right? If he says, you know, watch your pocketbook, you better obey. Thank you, Fred, for being so generous here and fun super chats. Frou is here. Frou Featherstone says our military belongs to the CCP. Top brass has bunkers. Citizens are completely unprotected. Yeah, it feels like that. It's like, did they just call the military and, hey, we're flying over a psycho balloon for you guys? And they say, that's no problem at all. We don't care. Zulu is here. What's up, Zulu? Says, sorry I'm late. I got in trouble at work for losing something important. My employers are making a big deal out of it. If anyone sees a rogue balloon, can you please email me at nihao.america at ccp.gov. Thanks in advance. Yeah. Yeah, if you have any idea, if you've seen anything weird floating around out there, yeah. Zulu's looking for it, actually. Ni hao, America, at ccp.gov. Yeah. Yeah. So is that an actual website? That would just be hysterical. If you've seen a weather balloon, if you're out in Kansas and you're on your lawn balloon, you know, you're on your lawn chair and you see that thing floating around, follow Zulu's advice. Help a Zulu out, okay? His weather balloon's floating around out there. Zulu left the aircraft bay doors open, you know, in the hangar, the aircraft hangar doors. Zulu's like, you know, I'm gonna go check on the microwave. Doors open. Surveillance spy satellite balloon floats away. Ah, crap. So if you see him, ni hao, America, at ccp.gov is going to be the best place to go. Thank you, Zulu, for sending that in. Hopefully you recover that thing without too much trouble. All right. And John McGarvey just gifted 12 memberships to our memberships over on YouTube. That's extremely generous of you, John. Thank you for doing that. So we've got some new members, which is great. We got Miss Jamie, Crystal Hart, Zena Xavier is now a member, courtesy of John McGarvey. Tyler Griff, Mr. Null in the house, Just My Opinion got a gift. Garrett House, Catherine, welcome. Bria, welcome. Looking awesome. Yeah, very, very cool. Very cool. Thank you, John, for doing that. And we do some fun stuff on our member-only streams. We had a morning member-only stream on Locals and on YouTube. So you get those same things if you are a YouTube member, no matter where you are. Very generous. And we love to see our community growing and more people are jumping in the chat and dropping off comments, and our community is growing, and we're grateful for that. So thank you, John, for sending that one in. Let's also say hello to our friends on, of course, this is Locals, but let's say hello to our Rumble friends. We have, who's in the house over there? We've got Dog Digger in the house, says, don't forget to hit that Rumble thumbs up button. Vientikis is over there. Nick Danger 3rd is there. Zone Girl. We've got Isle Paint, Mash 24, all chatting away. Paul Blart 270's in the house. Peter Tag. And so shout out to all of our Rumble friends. Let's see what's going on over on Twitter, because we love to support these free speech platforms. Oh, yes, we do. And we're almost at double digits today. This is getting out of control. Look at this. 8 viewers. Holy moly. We're going to probably break this whole platform if this gets any more out of control. All right. So let's see what else we have here in the chat, in the comments thread. Oh, gosh. Let's see. Okay, so hang on a second. All right, so we've got a bunch of stuff queued up, which is going to be a lot of fun. All right, so here is the first one from Gigum Gigum. Brought it 2 out of 3. Hold on a minute. So I'm going to play some of these maybe on the after party. All right, so we'll do some of these on the after party. This one is good. Here's a good one. Here's a one of our Locals community. Look at this one. From MASH. We were talking about MASH the other day. Another winner. This is what you're missing over at our Locals community. Look at everybody in this beautiful photograph, including the puppy and the rabbit. And do you know who this is right here? That's Vientikis Prime right there, looking fabulous. That's from Gigum Gigum. Absolutely love it. So thank you for that one from Paul and from Gigum Gigum in the house. Okay, so here, this one's from Paul Minot. And this is from our friend Paul Minot on Twitter. So if you're not following at Sleepy Dog Lee, here you go. This is for him. Paul Minot says, it just got very real with Dana White and the UFC machine entering the arena. I tried being nice to Rob Gouveia and all his fans on Locals and YouTube. All right, so if you're not familiar with this, so Paul Minot and I, there's going to be a Rumble Down Under. It's going to be sort of, younger strength versus old man strength. We've got a sort of a, throwdown thing brewing over there. And, apparently he's gone out and he's done something with the UFC. Let's see what's going on. He's contacting Dana White now. All right, let's see what this is all about.
Hi. Hey, Dana, how you doing?
Oh, it's Paul.
Listen, remember I was telling you I had a fight coming up with some dude in Arizona, a lawyer guy?
Yeah, that's me. It's us.
What's up? Everything's cool with that. It's going to be a lot of fun. No, it's mostly this guy's commenters on his Locals channel and especially YouTube. These people don't think this is real. So I'm going to need you to get on it, get me some training partners, start working on some promotion, because I'm going to have to teach some people some lessons, all right? Get on it.
Good night, you guys.
Wow.
You're not going to tell us who that was, Dana?
Wow, he's going.
No?
Wow, Dana White just went up and did it. Oh my gosh. Things are going to get out of control. So Dana White, great. So it's going to be a real deal now. Did you see that? It's official. Dana White, he just sprung out of action. So Paul Minot said, you better get going. I'm actually a little nervous now. I was not too nervous about Paul Minot. I mean, I was warming up. I was doing body shots. I'm feeling like Rocky, I'm feeling good. But he just ordered Dana White to get up out of his chair, and he just dropped the phone and he did it. So now I'm a little bit nervous about this, but we'll see. Well, maybe not that nervous. Okay, but that's going to be a big deal. So if you don't know what's happening here, you're obviously missing out on the fight of the century, which is coming up at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. It's going to be out of control. So it's going to just, all right. Well, all right. We don't need two of us here on the screen. All right. So that is from Paul Mino at Sleepy Dog Lee. It's going to be out of control, my friends. I can't wait for it. All right. Thank you, Paul, for that one. Let's see what else we had over on Twitter. We did. Yeah. We got Vientikiss is here. Says, just spitballing here, but U.S. might be trying to see if they can crack whatever the signal the balloon is using. Look, all you got to do about the Chinese balloon is get the bat wing like Michael Keaton did. That's right. Yeah. I knew the Joker had, Batman had a solution to this. This is Charles McGonigal. This is Charles McGonigal, professor of defense of the Russian arts. James Pepper is over here. Says if the balloon is carrying any type of weapons, shooting it down might just release it into the U.S. Yeah, I mean, that's a real concern. That's why people are asking that question. Does it have any nukes on there? Is there a reason you're not shooting it down? Like, it seems like the default would be to shoot it down. It crossed international airspace. It is an unwelcomed aircraft from an adversary here. So the default would be to shoot it down unless there was some reason you couldn't shoot it down. You know, people are wondering what that is. C-SPAN Review is here. Says, when do we stop assessing and start reacting? Start going on the offense instead of just getting raged out. And that came out from the C-SPAN Review. The C-SPAN Review, by the way, has some really good bingo cards. So if you're not following along over at C-SPAN Review, you should. Here, let me see. Yeah, here's a State of the Union bingo card, which is coming up here from C-SPAN Review. So the State of the Union, is that what, next week? So if he says any of these things, then you get a bingo card, or you get put a chip on your card. So J6, that'll definitely be there. Putin's price hike, that'll be in there for sure. So folks, he'll say folks. Oh, so I'm liking this far right column. Our plan is working. There you go. Ooh, so MAGA Republican, that's going to be the one. If he gets a MAGA Republican, I'm pretty confident that you're going to get a bingo in this left-hand column. You get a free Trump's fault space. We all like that one. The insurrection coup. Yeah. Coup might not be in there. He may not say that one. COVID on the rise. Is he going to say that? I don't know. Creepy whisper voice. That's also a gimme. So yeah, you'll get that one too. Those are all good stuff over from C-SPAN Review, who is excellent with the bingo cards. A lot of people will be getting bingos on that day. And some others from the Twitter chat before we jump on over to the locals after party, where we have even more memes to get to from our friend Paul and others. Danny McWilliams is in the house with some comments. Says that balloons, says I really need to read history, which is true. I do need to read more history. I don't doubt that for a minute. I do need to read more. In fact, I've bought a couple books about some history recently. So I'll do some more reading. Thank you for the recommendation. All right. And so those were from our friends over on Twitter. But now it is time to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, which is where we are going to go for our beautiful after party. And we're going to hang out there and have some additional fun on this beautiful Friday night. I hope you come and join us. The web address is at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're going over there right now. Come and join us. I also want to thank the sponsors of the show, our friends at Brickhouse Nutrition, which is where you can get your real organic superfood, Field of Greens, and get your servings of fruit and vegetable. It's actually good, okay? It actually tastes good. And so you can just mix it up in a regular mixer, shove it on back. It's not like that old green. If you had greens 10 years ago, so did I. This is not that. All right. Very good. Fieldofgreens.com. Save 15% with code Robert. Don't forget code Robert when you're checking out, and feel ultra vibrant and green. Of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group, where we help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. We offer free case evaluations, and you can reach our firm at rrlawaz.com or on the phone at 480-787-0300. 94. We also have our mods who mod down the fort for us to keep the YouTube chat nice and orderly, and we're very grateful for them. Our friend Vienticus Prime, K-Bean, Just Cause. We miss our friend Lean. We hope she's okay. Playing Hooky, who is in the house. We've got Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, who is looking for his weather balloon. It accidentally got out. Please support him. Send him an email. Ni hao, America, at ccp.gov. And also check out our friend Geomancy, who is on YouTube. You can follow him as well. We have our new meme for Sleepy Dog Lee, one of our meme smiths. This meme was created by Geegum Geegum. And this is Paul Mino's GIF meme. It's GIF, not GIF, even though Paul is very smooth, like the peanut butter. Of course, you can follow him at Sleepy Dog Lee on Twitter. And we also love our meme smith at Geegum Geegum over on Locals, which is where we are going right now. And so if you would like to join us, my friends, that's where we'll be. Hopefully you do. If not, we will see you back here on Monday next week to do it all again, because there's going to be a lot more to get to, and we're going to need your help right here so that together we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous weekend, my friends. Unplug from politics, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.